Mark Wilson sat in quiet reflection, replaying the events of the last 12 hours in his mind. His wedding day had been anticipated as one of the most cherished moments of his life. It had certainly started off that way, but as the hours ticked by, the experience had been a roller coaster of highs and lows. After saying, "I do," to the love of his life, Jen Sailor Wilson, they celebrated with family and friends at a lively reception. Mark indulged in a little too much champagne, though he didn't allow himself to get overly drunk. Jen had a drink as well, but it didn't seem to affect her much. The plan was to leave the reception early, ahead of their family and friends, and retreat to the honeymoon suite for a private night together to commemorate their union. Since meeting 8 months prior, they had made a mutual decision to forego premarital intimacy as a way to strengthen their commitment to one another. Both Mark and Jen had admitted they'd had previous lovers, but they believed that reserving this part of their relationship until marriage would create a stronger bond and show maturity. Despite the temptation, despite the longing, their resolve to wait had only deepened their connection. Things took an unexpected turn during the reception. While they were dancing together, Jen, still radiant in her wedding dress, leaned in and whispered that plans had changed. She discreetly slipped a folded note into Mark's hand and instructed him not to open it for 20 minutes. Curious but trusting, Mark complied. The note described Jen's intentions for an unconventional wedding night, promising that Mark would understand and even appreciate the reasoning behind her wishes once he grasped her vision. Mark, blinded by love and trust, agreed to wait. He would have done anything for Jen. At the end of their dance, Jen excused herself, leaving the floor hand in hand with Tom Daly, Mark's best man and closest friend. Mark spent the next half hour mingling with distant relatives and old acquaintances before finally retreating to a quiet corner to read the note. By then, more than 20 minutes had passed. His hands trembled as he unfolded the paper, and his entire world came crashing down as he read Jen's shocking words. "Mark, my beloved husband, I believe we should begin a new wedding tradition. Since we'll have the next 2 weeks to ourselves on a secluded beach, and the rest of our lives together, I think it's best for the bride to spend the wedding night with the best man. This way, he can fully appreciate why he was chosen as the best man. Similarly, the groom should spend the night with the maid of honor to strengthen that bond as well. Including these two dear friends in such an intimate way will only bring us all closer in the long run. By the time you're reading this, Tom and I will already have begun our night together, so it's too late to stop what I've planned. I assume Tom will want to maintain a close relationship with me after the honeymoon, especially since he's already arranged to rent the apartment next door to ours. This way, your best friend will also become my closest lover, after you, of course. Meanwhile, I've arranged for you to spend the night with Anne. She's waiting for you in the bridal suite, so please call her and make her feel welcome. I trust you'll make the most of this opportunity to form a deeper connection with her. Let's both enjoy this new tradition. I'll see you in the morning before I head to the airport. Love, Jen." Mark slumped into his chair, stunned beyond words. He couldn't fathom how Jen could orchestrate something so outrageous. And on their wedding day, no less. Why had she assumed he would go along with such a scheme? It struck him then. Jen never thought he would agree. That's why she'd counted on his trust to delay him from reading the note until it was too late to intervene. She had left the dance floor with Tom, heading straight for a private room as planned. It was a calculated betrayal. Still reeling, Mark decided to call Anne, the maid of honor, to try to make sense of the situation. Her phone rang several times before she picked up, her voice groggy. "Hello? Who is this?" "And it's Mark," he said, trying to keep his emotions in check. "I'm sorry to wake you. Can you talk for a moment?" And yawned audibly. "Of course, Mark. What's going on? Where's Jen?" Mark hesitated before replying, his voice laced with disbelief. "Apparently, Jen decided to sleep with Tom, and she expects me to spend the night with you. She called it some kind of kinky addition to the wedding ceremony. Did she ever mention anything like this to you?" And groaned. "Oh God, she did. I begged her not to go through with it. What a way to destroy a relationship. I'm so sorry, Mark. Honestly, I don't know how you didn't see this coming. She's been manipulating you from the start. Mark felt a fresh wave of hurt wash over him. So, you agreed to this? Absolutely not, and replied firmly. For one thing, I'm a lesbian. My girlfriend, June, is here with me right now. We were sound asleep when you called. Mark blinked in confusion. You're a lesbian? Then why would Jen make you her maid of honor? Why the charade of catching the bouquet? And sighed heavily. Mark, I hate to tell you this, but until Jen started dating you, and even for a while after, she and I were more than just roommates. In fact, her bachelorette party was, well, let's just say it wasn't your typical bridal send-off. And she's been seeing Tom on the side ever since you introduced them. Mark's heart sank. He had been blind to all of it. The chastity he had maintained for the sake of their relationship was nothing but a cruel joke. What about June? He asked bitterly. Is she planning to move in with you when Jen moves into my apartment? Yes, and admitted. We've been planning it ever since you and Jen announced the honeymoon. Look, Mark, I understand if you need time to figure things out, but one thing is clear. You don't deserve this. If you stay with her, it'll only lead to more heartache. Mark sighed. I need time to think. But one thing's for sure. If Jen and I stay together, I won't share her with anyone. Not with Tom and not with you. And agreed. I get it, Mark. I'll cut ties with her too. She's burned too many bridges at this point. Mark thanked her and ended the call, his mind racing. By the time Jen appeared in the breakfast room the next morning, still dressed in her wedding gown, Mark had already begun to lay the groundwork for what would come next. She didn't even greet him properly. Her only complaint was that she hadn't been able to change out of her dress. Mark gestured to the seat across from him. Why don't you sit down, Jen? We need to talk. Mark's reckoning. Mark confronted Jen in the breakfast room. Her wedding dress an ironic reminder of the love and trust she had shattered. Calm but resolute, Mark revealed his night of action and the consequences Jen and Tom would face. He disclosed that he had checked out of the hotel at 3 a.m., sending their luggage to the honeymoon destination but ensuring Jen was left with nothing, not even clothes to change into. Jen, initially dismissive, began to realize the gravity of the situation as Mark detailed his plans. And Jen's former roommate and betrayed maid of honor interrupted the confrontation, exposing Jen's deceit. She revealed that Jen had manipulated and betrayed everyone, including her and Tom, for selfish gains, and announced her departure from Jen's life. Her loyalty shifted entirely to Mark. Mark then turned his attention to Tom, his once best friend. In a few sentences, Mark dismantled Tom's future, revealing that their boss had been informed of Tom's betrayal and would fire him. Tom, sensing danger from Mark's family, fled the room under their watchful and vengeful eyes. Back to Jen, Mark made it clear. There would be no divorce, only an annulment, as their marriage had never been consummated. He revealed he had taken steps to ensure her professional life would crumble, just as her personal life had. He'd also publicly shared her incriminating note, ensuring the world knew the truth. Through tears and desperation, Jen pleaded silently, but Mark's final words left no room for reconciliation. He declared their relationship dead, his love replaced by disgust. With his family by his side, Mark exited the room, leaving Jen to face her ruined reputation and uncertain future alone. This gripping tale of betrayal and justice leaves a strong impression of one man's resilience and refusal to be a victim. It's a poignant reminder of the importance of trust and integrity in relationships, and the consequences of their absence. Jen's downfall. Jen remained seated in the empty breakfast room, trembling as the weight of her actions pressed down on her like a crushing wave. Her tears blurred her vision, and her body felt cold despite the stifling shame burning inside her. She scanned the room, hoping someone, anyone, might come to her aid, but the faces she once relied on were now filled with disdain or indifference. The whispers of judgment echoed in her mind, even in the silence of the room. Her parents, who had been so proud of her on her wedding day, now avoided her gaze entirely. Her mother, sitting near the exit, muttered something under her breath before shaking her head and walking out. Jen's father followed close behind, offering her only a cold, cutting remark as he left. "You made your bed, Jen. Now lie in it." Even her siblings, usually quick to defend her, offered no comfort. Her younger brother gave her a long, disgusted look before turning away. One of her cousins, who had once idolized her, couldn't contain her anger and muttered, "What kind of person does something like this?" Jen had no answer. It wasn't just family. Friends she had invited to the wedding, a group she had carefully curated over the years, had vanished. They had seen the spectacle unfold, heard the gossip spreading like wildfire, and made their exits one by one, unwilling to be associated with her scandal. The judgment in their eyes haunted her as the door closed behind each of them. Reality sets in. Jen glanced down at her hands, trembling as she replayed Mark's words. She was truly alone now. No clothes, no phone, no money, no way to even leave the hotel without facing more humiliation. She couldn't bear the idea of walking past the staff or other guests, who likely knew about her disgrace by now. The image of her note, now plastered on her Facebook profile, twisted her stomach in knots. How many of her colleagues, friends, and distant relatives had already seen it? The thought was unbearable. Her mind scrambled for a plan. Surely, someone could help her, right? She thought of Tom, but the memory of him fleeing the room made her cringe. He had already realized there was no saving himself, much less her. Mark's brothers and cousins were likely still outside, waiting to ensure Tom never came back. As for Anne, Jen knew there was no salvaging that relationship, and had been her closest confidant, and now even she had turned her back. Jen clenched her fists, her desperation growing. "This can't be happening," she whispered to herself. "This isn't real." But it was. Every bridge she'd ever built was now in flames. Her carefully constructed web of lies had unraveled, leaving her exposed and humiliated. A hollow morning. The hours dragged on as Jen sat in the breakfast room, unable to move. She heard snippets of conversations as hotel staff cleaned around her, their hushed voices undoubtedly discussing the scandal. At one point, a kind-looking waitress approached with a glass of water, setting it down gently without making eye contact. Jen mumbled a thank you, but the waitress walked away quickly, her disapproval evident. As the morning wore on, the harsh reality of her situation began to sink in. The honeymoon she had so eagerly anticipated was gone. Mark had stripped her of every comfort, every semblance of control. Even her job was at risk now, thanks to the social media storm brewing around her. She couldn't even blame Mark for his actions. She had orchestrated her own downfall. The weight of regret was suffocating. She thought back to the night before, to the smug satisfaction she had felt as she handed Mark that note. She had been so certain of her plan, so confident that she could manipulate him and everyone around her. How had it all gone so wrong? A new low. By mid-afternoon, Jen finally forced herself to stand. Her legs felt weak, her body heavy with exhaustion and despair. She needed to leave the hotel, but she had no idea where to go. Her purse, her phone, even her passport, all gone. Her wedding dress, once a symbol of her new life, now felt like a prison, a constant reminder of the happiness she had destroyed. As she stumbled toward the lobby, she overheard a conversation between two hotel employees. They were laughing softly, one of them gesturing toward her as she passed. She caught a snippet of their words. "That's her. The bride who ruined her own wedding." Jen's cheeks burned with shame, but she didn't have the strength to confront them. She kept walking, her eyes fixed on the floor. When she reached the front desk, the clerk gave her a wary look. "Can I help you?" he asked cautiously. Jen opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. What could she say? That she needed help? That she had nowhere to go? That she had betrayed everyone who had ever cared about her? The clerk waited for a moment before sighing and gesturing toward a phone on the counter. "You can use the house phone if you need to make a call," he said flatly. Jen nodded silently and picked up the receiver, dialing the only number she could remember. Her parents. The phone rang and rang before going to voicemail. She tried again and again, but there was no answer. Finally, on her fourth attempt, her father picked up. "What do you want, Jen?" His voice was cold, devoid of any warmth or compassion. Jen hesitated, her voice trembling. Dad, I need help. I, I don't know what to do. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Finally, her father spoke. You made your choices, Jen. Now you have to live with them. Don't call this number again. The line went dead. The long road ahead. Jen set the phone down slowly, her hands shaking. She turned and walked out of the hotel, her bare feet silent against the polished floor. She didn't know where she was going or what she would do next. All she knew was that she was utterly alone, a woman who had gambled everything and lost. As the hotel doors closed behind her, Jen stepped out into the harsh sunlight, her wedding dress billowing in the wind. The world felt colder, emptier, and far less forgiving than it had just 24 hours ago.